Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a book video. I haven't done one of these in a hot minute. So I probably should have filmed this in July to break up what I read the first 6 months of the year and then the second 6 months of the year. But I'm a month late. But I figured I would I'm going to try to be really quick because there are quite a few books to get through. I've so far read 79 books this year. And I have about half of them in physical book with me today. And a lot of them I have given away or lent to friends. And some of them I read on my phone or by audiobook. And I'll tell you which one I did. And so basically it's just going to be maybe a quick little summary of each book and whether or not I recommend it and what I gave it out of 5 on Goodreads. If you don't have Goodreads and you read books, you need Goodreads. Be my friend. That's all. I have linked it in the description below and my username is just Corey Queen, so same as TikTok. But without further ado, I'm going to go in the order in which I read them, not necessarily best to worst or worst to best, but there are some absolute fires and there are some absolute flops. So let's get into it. Starting off the year, the first book I read this year was Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book of a 3-book series, I believe. And Elsie Silver is a really good author. I think she writes it's not quite young adult. It's kind of juvenile, easy plot, good smut, love a bit of romance. It's very predictable, but very enjoyable. They're a good size. They're not too short, but I loved Wild Eyes a lot more, which is the first book. It's this pink one, which I read last year. This I gave a 3 out of 5. It's good, it's cute, but the first one is better. The next book I read is, I don't have the physical copy, so I'm just going to show you what the cover looks like. It is Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes. This is the cover. It has a 3.96 on Goodreads. I gave it a 2. Did I give it a review? Usually, I'd say half of the books I read, I feel strongly enough to give it some feedback. I think I just found this really boring. I said I didn't really like the plot, the characters, the conflict, or the resolution. It wasn't a hit for me. That's what I said. So I wouldn't recommend that one. Side note, how cute is my mug? It says Cell Culture Queen. Get yourself a cuppa if you don't already have one. I think we're going to be here for a minute. The third book I read this year is Bad Men by Julie May Cohen. This is the cover. Now, the Goodreads review only has 3.6, which is in general not high enough for me to read. Usually it has to have at least a 3.8 in order for it to be worth my time. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Did I say anything about it? Oh, sometimes I get really emotional in my reviews. So I just said, a female vigilante serial killer, a she Dexter. This had so much potential. 80% of the book is about John, this random guy she basically stalks because she has a huge crush on him despite not knowing him. This is in stark contrast to her baddie sociopath never liked men agenda. The whole romance plot and pursuing this guy is so out of place with the concurrent serial killer plot and is just so bizarre and makes no sense. So many pointless side plots that lead nowhere, and in the whole novel about a serial killer, allegedly, there's half an actual murder. She has some guy semi-conscious in her bathroom. Other than that, a few murders were mentioned in the past. Then at the end, it's oh yeah, I also killed this guy. Ugh, what a frustrating read. So 2 out of 5, we're not recommending Bad Men. I then read The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. And this, I'm surprised, actually also has a really low rating, 3.65. I don't know why I read it. I gave it a 2 out of 5, so I really didn't like it. But I did really like the guest list. I'm not going to say I really enjoyed it. I think I gave a 3 or a 4, but I thought it was good. This, however, I did not like. I said 2.5. Boring. Read this after Foley's guest list and it was such a flop. Too many characters and the plot had such a potential, but it was so mid. So, gosh, we're not off to a cracking start, are we? We then read Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. Murasaki Bookshop. Now, this is translated from Japanese, I believe, and also it has 3.6. I'm deliberately reading things that are not reviewed highly, and I don't know why, what was going on with me in January. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I didn't write any reviews. I just gave it a 3 out of 5. I listened to it. This was the first audiobook that I listened to, and I just remember it being whatever. It was not offensive. It was fine. So I probably wouldn't waste my time on this one. There are some good ones coming, I promise. I don't know why this was such a flop for me. Next up, we have The Wedding People by Alison Espach. It has a 4.11 on Goodreads, and I gave it a 4 out of 5, which is pretty good from me. I said it was so unique, dark humor, loved the plot and characters. Just maybe a bit of a trigger warning with suicide and depression, etc. But I think that this was done so well. I think that it's really dark, but it's funny. And I really liked the story. I thought it was really cute and very unique. I then read Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wayne. This is rated 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave her a 3 out of 5. I really started getting into my historical fiction, specifically female protagonist, after I read Kristen Hanna's The Women and The Nightingale. Kristen Hanna is probably my favorite author currently of all time. Her books have me in an absolute chokehold, everything about them. And I'm not alone in this. She's like one of the highest reviewed authors on Goodreads. Some of her books, I think The Nightingale is like 1.5 million reviews and an average of 4.6. So that means most people gave it a perfect score, which is so insane. Sorry, I digress. So I really enjoyed those. I like sort of women, history, war setting, doing baddie things. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I said I kept comparing this to The Women, which was fantastic. And I found this a bit slow and a bit boring. And why did each character have 3 different names? Because they all had code names and it was just a little bit hard to keep track. And yeah, I said it was hard to keep engaged. So I think if you like historical fiction, specifically women and war and stuff, maybe give that a go. But for the general population, I probably wouldn't really recommend it. It was just kind of like, fine. Nowhere near as good as Kristen Hanna's, for example. Moving on to the next book that I read, which is here somewhere. Now, I am a certified female author lover, okay? I can count on one hand how many male authors I've even read, but in saying that, Christian White is easily my favorite male author. He's one of my favorite Australian authors just in general. This I liked. It wasn't his best though, in my opinion. I think did this come out this year or last year? Has an average of 4.14 on Goodreads. I gave her a 4 out of 5. I said it was a very good twist. Had me sitting, staring at the wall and then going back through the book. I love the writing. It's so easy and engaging. I don't love a dual timeline though, and he seems to have one in every single book. So he likes a dual timeline. He also wrote The Nowhere Child, which everyone really raves about. It's very popular, but also I don't think that's the best one. I really liked Wild Place. I would recommend this, especially if you like a thriller. I then read Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True. It's pretty popular. It has a 4 out of 5 from 100,000 reviews on Goodreads. My hair's just being a little bit, I did a blowout, so it's just have a mind of its own. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I said this was tea. I loved it so much. It was so entertaining. So I would absolutely recommend that. We then have an assortment of Freida McFadden's because it wouldn't be me talking about books without talking about Freida McFadden. I feel like Freida McFadden is kind of the Colleen Hoover of the thriller genre, and don't cancel me for saying that, but I just feel the same when I read them. Are they objectively good literary masterpiece books? No. Are they incredibly engaging? Yes. And the twists of Freida McFadden's are out of this world. They often are a little bit ridiculous, but they are so entertaining for me, and I'm always on my toes. I'm always shocked. I'll be like halfway through and I'll be like, I think I know where this is going. Could be this person, could be this person, could be this person, because I'm so used to Freida's writing, and I'm always shocked. I'm always left gagged, if you will. So the first Freida book that I read this year is The Inmate, 4 out of 5 on Goodreads from 76,000 reviews. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I said jaw on the floor, twists and ending were insane, bit far-fetched, but an easy page-turning read. That, for me, is all 15 of Freida McFadden's books that I have read. She has more than 15, but I think I've read about 15 of them. They're all fantastic because they're entertaining, not because they are objectively good books. I hope that makes sense. Like Colleen Hoover, awful writing, potentially. I know a lot of people are like certified Colleen Hoover haters, but I thoroughly enjoy reading those books. It's sort of the equivalent for me of watching reality television. You can say like, this is doing nothing for me and my education and my brain development, but the dopamine, okay? Oh my God, the dopamine. Give it to me. So next we have yet another Freida McFadden. This is The Coworker. And this one I also really liked. I think consistently across the board, most of Freida McFadden's for me are a 4 out of 5. They're great, but they're not perfect. So Freida McFadden's The Coworker only has a 3.75 on Goodreads. That's the cover. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and I said I liked it. I didn't love it. Going from she's the bad guy to she's the good guy literally 10 times was boring and lazy. noticing a trend with her writing that everyone has two names, which I think is a cop-out and it's becoming repetitive. So I do think that she has like a bit of formula where it's like, oh my God, it's actually that person, but we just refer to them by like a nickname or like the letter of their first name. And it's like, oh my God, it was that same person all along. Like, it's just kind of, it gets a little bit lazy. We need to like be a little bit more inventive, I think. But so entertaining nonetheless. Just had to reheat my coffee for the third time because I've been yapping. Delicious. Okay. I then read The Passengers by John Mars. I think this is the first book of his that I've read. It's got 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I said, meh, it was an easy, well-written read, but it just didn't grab me like an episode of Dark Mirror, but with lots of poorly developed characters I just didn't care about and too many side plots. It was very far-fetched in premise, but also in side story, i.e. having 2 families and 2 lots of kids with the same name and getting away with it for a decade. Having a dead body in the boot, being a pedophile, there was just a lot of insane storylines within this book and it made it a little bit ridiculous. So, I mean, I would recommend it if you're a big reader and you like dystopia, but otherwise probably pass. I then read Kelly Bishop's The Third Gilmore, and I actually listened to this as an audiobook because she narrates it. It has 4.3 out of 5 on Goodreads. I love Kelly Bishop. I think she's such a slay. I gave this a perfect 5 out of 5. I had no review. I have no notes. I thought it was so engaging. It's really unique. Autobiographies are really unique because it's like, how do you like it or how do you not like it? Because it's literally just a series of events. Like, it's nonfiction. It's just the things that happened. So I think that means that it's quite hard to give them a review because it's literally someone's life. But I think that the way in which the story was told, it was engaging. I loved that she narrated it. I am obsessed when autobiographers read their own books. Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, I'm looking at you. And I just thought it was really, really good. So especially if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, you'll love it. Next, we have The Boyfriend by Freida McFadden. This is one of her newer ones. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I said it was good. I could never have seen the twist coming, which is the same with every single Freida McFadden book ever. And I loved it. Highly recommend if you like a thriller. No notes. Also, I've started dressing for my color palette. I had my color analysis done and I am a true autumn, which I think means a warm autumn. And it's like emeralds, forest greens, maroons, browns, mochas. Love. Okay, next up, I read Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. Now, I read this on my phone. I didn't like this. This has a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 2. I said, this book is well written, but I just didn't love it. I liked the plot line of a misdiagnosed familial psychiatric disorder, although the entire book is miserable and frustrating and bizarre. It had a Lisa Tadeo Otessa Mashfag, if I'm saying that right, probably not, feel to the writing in that it's so deliciously grotesque that you don't feel any better after reading it, but you'd also read it again. Contrary to Martha Friel's take, Sorrow and Bliss is nothing like Fleabag. There's also approximately 0 bliss. It is not funny, it's insanely unrelatable, and the protagonist is deeply unlikable. But I can also acknowledge that it's actually quite a good, interesting book. It just wasn't for me. So if you like that sort of train wreck but can't look away, then you might like it. I didn't really. I then read Before You Knew My Name by Jacqueline Bublitz. I also read this on my phone, I think. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Clearly was a flop. I said so much fluff, boring, depressing, and predictable. Would not recommend. And we're back to another Freida McFadden. This is The Teacher. I have it here. The Teacher. This has a 4.9 on Goodreads from 80,000 reviews. I gave it a trusty 4 out of 5. Seems to give all Freida books a 4 out of 5. I said, I literally don't know how she does it, but in every single book, I never see the twists and turns coming. She doesn't seem to run out of ideas. Her plots are so excellent. I'm obsessed. I read this so quickly. The twist in this, I was like, jaw on the floor. I had to go back and read it. Amazing. Highly, highly recommend. I then read Acts of Desperation by Megan Noland. Now, this has a 3.7, so it's objectively not the best. But I gave it a 2. I said, meh, depressing but poetic, good to strengthen your misandry. So I feel like in this phase, I was going through like a bit of a Sorrow and Bliss, like Lisa Tadeo, like kind of just like a depressing read era. And if that's what you're in, you might like this, but I mean, it was poetic, it was objectively well written, but I thought it was depressing and I didn't enjoy reading it as such. Phew, we're back on the Freida McFaddens. You thought we were done, we're not. I literally have like, all of these are Freidas that we have to get through. So The Crash, which is this one. Oh, this one I think actually did come out this year before The Tenant. The Crash. I didn't like this. This is my least favorite of Freida's books. It has a 3.7 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I said, meh, this is the worst Freida book by far. Pretty unrealistic and the twists were far-fetched. Hated the lack of reprimand as well. Not a satisfying read at all. So you could definitely probably skip this one if you are a diehard Freida McFadden and you just want like for completion, read it. It's a quick read, you know, it's an easy read. Now, I don't actually have this book because I lent it to my boss, but it is Never Lie. And this one is the most highly rated, I think. It has 4 out of 5 from 100,000 reviews. I don't think this was my favorite. I gave it a 3 out of 5 and I said the twist would have been good if the book wasn't written in first person. It's lazy writing. So it's like that whole unreliable narrator and I just can't stand it. I think it's lazy. One of my least favorite Freida books, getting awfully bored of her using nicknames to reveal identities of characters actually being the same person. I.e. Trisha is the patient PL, same as with the boyfriend. Gretchen goes by Daisy, the co-worker Mia and Amelia, they're actually the same person, but like the whole book goes through as if they're different people, and then the twist is like, oh my god, they're actually the same person. Like she does this countless times in so many books. And in The Teacher, Jay and Hudson, like they're actually the same person. Sorry if this is a spoiler, but yeah, they recycled themes of a seemingly innocent character from the start, changing their name slightly, and then boom, they're the bad guy. So I think that I was just a bit turned off by this point because I was like, I want something more. We've seen this. I think I've seen this show before. Give me a new one. I then had The Perfect Son, which I feel like a lot of people don't really like. I think I liked this more than I liked... Okay, so this has a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think this was fine. I think it was a little bit predictable, but I enjoyed it. Probably would recommend. I probably recommend all Freida McFadden books, to be honest. Like, I will read every single one of hers, whether they are predictable or not. What is my hair? I then read, another Kristen Hanna book. Love Kristen Hanna. I have nothing bad to say about her whatsoever. Her books are masterpieces, that is all. So Four Winds has 4.3 out of 5 on Goodreads from 80,000 reviews. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think that it's historical fiction. And I read this, did I audiobook this? I think I did audiobook this. And her books are pretty long. They're pretty dense, but they're just so well written. It's about like a drought. And I'm like, why would I read a book about the, floodplains of Texas in a drought in like the 1930s or whatever? Like that sounds so flipping boring. Give me some smut, give me some thriller. But I'm telling you, give it a chance. They are so engaging. There's like the romance and then like the character development is like nothing else I've ever seen. So that's all I have to say about Kristen Hanna. Probably not. There's probably going to be more I have to say about her shortly. I then read my first Ali Hazelwood book, which was Love on the Brain. This guy here, like look at this cover. Like this is so young adult. I'm obsessed. I actually really like Ali Hazelwood's niche. It is juvenile. It's not young adult. It's still for adults, but it's juvenile. It's easy to read. It's pretty predictable. It's cutesy. It's romance. But the exception is the female protagonist lead lady is always like a STEM baddie, a science gal. As a STEM girly myself, love this. Love. What did I give her? 3.9 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I said so predictable, so cliche, but I loved it. It was a super fun and cutesy read. Not particularly a good book, but a book that I really, really enjoyed. So it's giving like icebreaker, like just easy, quick, cutesy girly read. Okay? If you're a science girl, you'd eat this up. I just know it. I then read Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. And this has 4.1 on Goodreads, and I gave it a 5 out of 5, which is insane because this is the furthest thing from this, okay? It's still fiction. It won a prize. It is the best fiction book of 2020. So I said, this is so unique. I loved it. It was a bit ugly, mysterious, heartbreaking, but beautiful. Excellent writing, excellent story, chef's kiss. I'll give you a brief summary. This chick is obsessed with birds and migration patterns, and she's like a scientist-ish, and she is trying to like follow this last species of bird from like the North Pole to the South Pole, and she needs to like get on a fish boat. And it's bizarre, but it's poetic, okay? It's not for everyone. It wasn't like a page turner as such, but objectively, fantastic book. I mean, it won Best Fiction, which is kind of crazy. This is another kind of teeny bopper-esque Ali Hazelwood kind of young adult almost, in that it's so juvenile and silly. It is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. And this is actually the second book to Better Than the Movies, which was the first book that I did read. I didn't really like either of them, but I read them both still. So, okay, this is actually young adult fiction. Okay, yeah. So it's giving their next door neighbors, it's giving enemies to lovers, it's giving juvenile, okay? So I didn't hate the first one. I think I gave the first one like a 2 or a 3. It was just an easy audiobook to listen to, and it's on my library app, so it's free, and it was available, and I was like, yeah, go on then. So this second book though, I said 1.5 out of 5. I was so close to DNFing it. It was so boring. It was so cringe in a bad way. I love cringe in a good way. This was cringe in a bad way. I said this was nowhere near as good as the first book. It ruined the first book for me. So much pointless waffle. It was so frustrating to get through. Predictable, self-deprecating. Breaks up with her because he's not good enough. Where? That's the whole book. Boring. So I'd give that a skip. I then read this was my second Ali Hazelwood book. This is The Love Hypothesis. If you have been living under a rock, this is being turned into a movie with Lily Reinhart. I have no notes about the casting. She's dyed her hair dark. I'm so excited for this to come out. It has a 4.1 on Goodreads from almost 200,000 reviews. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I said so cringe, so cliche, but so good. I loved it. Not quite as good as Love on the Brain, but still great. So I think I preferred Love on the Brain, which is tea. This has an interesting trope in that it's kind of a power dynamic. She's a PhD student and he is a PI. Not her direct PI, but like it's still like a little bit of a, there's a bit of smut in here. I really liked it. So would recommend that. The next book I read was an audiobook, and it is Wifedom by Anna Funder. It is the story of George Orwell's wife. That's the cover, you've probably seen it, it's very popular. Has a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I think it was good. I think it was maybe a little bit boring, but again, it's it's biographical. How do you make something that is just factual be interesting? I didn't really like the narrator, actually, come to think of it either, but I think the story was really interesting, and I didn't really know anything about George Orwell until I read how cooked he was to his wife, so. It's giving like, he was a crazy homophobe, but he was probably a homosexual, and he was also like racist and a woman hater and like really problematic. So, I mean, it was interesting, but it wasn't like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Now, I have read a couple of Emily Henry books. This year, I've read Beach Read. Now, this has 3.98 on Goodreads, but I gave it a 2. I said this was boring, and I didn't like the story, and I didn't like the characters. LaMayo. So I wouldn't really recommend that. I thought it was kind of boring. I did really like, what's the one where she is a librarian? Book Lovers? No. She's just got so many books. Oh, Funny Story. Funny Story is the one I'm thinking of where she's a librarian, and I really liked that one. Happy Place, I gave a 4 out of 5. These are not books that I've read this year. I'm just trying to tell you, if you're looking into Emily Henry, I would recommend Happy Place and Funny Story before Beach Read and Book Lovers. Yeah, I gave Funny Story a 3 as well. I'm actually currently reading this, which is obviously not on this list, but just because I feel like telling you Great Big Beautiful Life. I think it came out this year. So far it's okay. I feel like she does fiction like reasonably well. Like they're not amazing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but they're good enough for me to keep reading them. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's how I feel. Okay, I then read Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. You probably know it. It's artsy, it's grungy. She's not like other books. 3.7 on Goodreads from 200,000 reviews. I gave it a 2. Do I have it? Oh, I think I literally gave it away. I think I gave it to a charity shop. I said, this is nothing like Sally Rooney's works, and the self-proclamation that it is absurd. This is a poorly executed anti-romance. The first half is about the relationship of a couple, then it unnecessarily becomes his younger sister's story, then his lover's story, then goes back to the original couple. I often didn't know the point of what I was reading and just really did not enjoy it at all. This book is not smart enough to achieve the pretentiousness it strived for. Mic drop. It was a real slug. I really would not recommend it. I didn't like it at all. We then have another Freida book, The Locked Door. I also lent this to a friend. It has 3.99 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I said, my God, she can write a page turner. Could not put this down in true Freida fashion. Multiple timelines and a twist you couldn't see coming. Chef's kiss. So I would highly recommend that. I then wanted to branch out. I'd seen David Baldacci everywhere. He's kind of like a man's go-to fiction, and it is the first book in the Amos Decker series. It's Memory Man. It has 4.12 on Goodreads, and I gave it a 2. I said it was far-fetched. It didn't have a satisfying ending. There was no motive for murdering someone's wife and child, just symbolism. Seriously. Plot holes in the perfect memory of the protagonist. Hugely underwhelming. So I think that is probably not an author for me, and I would not recommend it. I didn't enjoy it at all. But clearly some people did because it has really high reviews on Goodreads. I then read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Now, the first book of Kristen Hanna I read was The Women, and I loved it. I gave it a perfect score. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I definitely gave The Nightingale a perfect score as well. Yeah, so this has 1.9 million reviews, an average score of 4.64. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I said I would never consider historical fiction as a favorite genre of mine unless it's Kristen Hanna who's writing it. Her writing is immaculate. Her ability to deliver historically accurate recounts with the most insane, deep characters and relationships and plots constantly leaves me in awe. I thought I got through this unscathed until I started violently sobbing in the last quarter. This book was incredible. It was so devastating. I loved it so much. Highly recommend The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Sip break. Next, we have Patricia Cornwell. So I've started this book multiple times when I was a lot younger. It is one of my mum's favorite authors, and she read the entire Skate Cup Header series when she was like pregnant with me in the 90s, and it was just like, you know, kind of like the Bones-esque era of like women baddies doing crime things and doctor things. So the first book is Postmortem, and it has 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I said I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was fine. And I think I have grown to expect really incredible things from books. I want shocking twists, big turns, whereas this is just a safe, steady, good enough plot, good enough characters where the person who done it isn't the protagonist's love child. It's like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. So it can be a little bit scary because like some of the crimes are like rape and murder of women, but it's fine. And I think I have about 20 of these books by Patricia Cornwell. I got them all. My mum has a couple, but I got these from the Lifeline Book Festival, and they're pretty old. Their print date, it probably doesn't even say. Oh yeah. 1990, the first book was published, but this is a combination of the first 2, I think. Yeah, Postmortem and Body of Evidence. So Postmortem is the first one. I gave it a 3 out of 5. And then the second book, this series is huge, by the way. I want to say there's like 28 books in the series and she's still writing them. It's kind of crazy. So the second one, Body of Evidence, which I actually listened to because it's on my library app and it's free, I gave also a 3 out of 5. So like they're good enough books written in the 90s, giving like almost, not quite Bones because they're not like, it's not anthropology, it's very much like medical examination. If you remember that show that only had like 2 seasons before it was cancelled and it was called Body of Proof, it's like that. So like I would recommend if you do like crime fiction female baddie protagonist. I then read Dirty Diana, and I gave this away because it was bad. It has an average of 3.58 reviews. It is by Jen Besser and Shana Festi. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I said I really, really disliked this. The entire book is about a toxic failing marriage. The smut is meaningless without proper character development. I felt like I didn't know or could relate to any of the characters. There was no grit or actual lust. It was incredibly surface level and the plot was giving absolutely nothing. She collects women's sexual fantasies and the entire third of the book, the middle third of the book is about a fling in her 20s and that's it. The ending was a cliffhanger, but not in a good suspenseful way, in a lazy, I've had enough of writing this book now, let's just drop everything way. So, I mean, if you like meaningless smut, you might like it, but as a book, it was really shit. Wouldn't recommend. I then read Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan, and I quite liked this. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I said it was very cliche, it was a bit cringe, very predictable, but an easy, wholesome read. I love that the protagonist was a divorcee with kids. How fun and fresh. So a very easy, polite read. Would probably recommend this. I then read the third Kay Scarpetta book, which is All That Remains. Again, obviously by Patricia Cornwell. Has 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think as well, it's just like, fine, it's whatever. It's part of a series. I'm probably gonna just keep reading it because it's an easy read. And most of them are on my library app. If you are in Queensland or Brisbane, I think it's Brisbane City Council, and you have a library card, you can get this app and not all of the books, but most of the books, not new ones, but like classics and stuff are on there in like audiobook form and like ebook form, and it's free, so it's a slay. Okay, we then have Ward D. Now, I know this is a favorite of a lot of people's of Freida McFadden. It has 4 out of 5 stars from 500,000 reviews. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Ward D is the one where she is the medical student. I quite liked this. Would probably recommend. I then read Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. This has 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I said the first half was tolerable, but my God, it dragged on. It was so boring and repetitive. 500 pages in one sentence. Toxic brothers, the younger of which is involved with an older woman, and they go back and forth no less than 20 times. We love each other, but the age difference means we can't be together, sad face. The smut also made me very uncomfy. It's very use me for your own pleasure vibe, and I hated it, but I can acknowledge that that was probably the point. There's no plot, nothing happens. I like Rooney's writing usually, but this really missed the mark for me, so I would not recommend Intermezzo. Give it a 2 out of 5. I gave it away as well. I had it, and now I do not have it. This is One by One. It has a 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I had a few questions and concerns with this book. There was a few plot holes, and yeah, I said it was a good twist, but not her best. There was a few too many plot holes and it was a bit too convenient. I won't read out my review because there are spoilers in it, but if you want to read it, it's on my Goodreads. I gave it a 3, not her best. It's not awful, but like you could definitely take or leave that one. I then read Conversations on Love by Natasha Lunn. This has 4.2 on Goodreads. I gave this a perfect score of 5. I didn't elaborate. I didn't give a review. I just loved this. It is it's very unique in that it's nonfiction, obviously, and each sort of chapter or segment is written by a different author. So it has bits from Dolly Alderton, who I love, bits from Lisa Taddeo, and a whole bunch of other authors. I would really recommend this. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I then read The Soul of a Woman by Isabella Land, and I read this on my phone in ebook form. It has 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I also gave it a 4 out of 5. I didn't elaborate. It's quite a short read from memory. It is... When I say that I was a feminist in kindergarten, I am not exaggerating, begins Isabella Land. As a child, she watched her mother, abandoned by her husband, provide for her 3 small children without resources or voice. Isabel became a fierce and defiant little girl determined to fight for the life her mother couldn't have. So she's sort of coming of age in the 1960s. She rode the first wave of feminism and worked with lots of like-minded female journalists. And it's largely the story of her life. It's kind of autobiographical. And yeah, I thought it was a really cute little read, especially if you are interested in non-fiction feminism. Highly recommend. This next one is like so out of left field. I also gave it away when I finished reading it. If I don't absolutely love a book, I'll probably just give it away when I finish reading it. I'm like the opposite of a hoarder. Marie Kondo and I would be great friends. So this is actually the third book in a series, which is kind of crazy that I started here, but a client actually sent it to me in the mail. They were like, this is my favorite book, read it. And I was like, I love book recommendations, especially when someone says this is my favorite book. I was like, I was locked in. It is translated from Japanese. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It is The Devotion of Suspect X. It's a thriller set in Japan. It has 4.1 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it a 3. I said, I think this book was relatively well written, but for me, there were too many characters and the plot was a bit scattered and not easy to follow. I also hated the ending. It was incredibly dissatisfying, potentially a 2.5 out of 5 from me. So personally, I wouldn't recommend that. I did not like it. I then have another Kristen Hanna book, and I listened to this one. It is Another Life, and it has 4.1 on Goodreads. I gave her a 4. So this book was so good. I literally was so invested in the characters and the situation, but I was a bit disappointed by the ending. But overall, I would recommend it. This is not so much historical fiction, which we know that Kristen Hanna loves so much. This is modern day, but it's sort of about a woman whose marriage has crumbled. She's gone back to the small hometown to help the family business. And it's a really good book, and her way of writing, chef's kiss, do recommend. I then read the 4th Kay Scarpetta book by Patricia Cornwell, Cruel and Unusual. It has a 4.1 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I said, I really like the Scarpetta series so far. I like the protagonist and the plot lines are tolerable. This one had a few too many characters and I found it hard to keep up with them all and literally had to Google what the ending meant because I didn't remember who was who. So this was a little bit of a flop. I think the first and second ones were the best for me, and I'm really hoping that the books 5 and continuing are better. Maybe I just wasn't focusing as much as I should have been, but this was meh. I've read a lot of Sally Hepworth's books. I then read The Secrets of Midwives. This has 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4. I think Sally Hepworth's books are so cute and so easy to read. This one in particular is about 3 generations of midwives and secrets that keep them together and push them apart and ultimately bind them together. It's a really short read from memory. It's like less than 300 pages. It's a cute read. I really liked that one. I then read another Sally Hepworth. Oh my God, I read like 3 in a row. Because again, they're on my library app and they're free. So the next one I read was The Family Next Door by Sally Hepworth, 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4. So it's set in like suburbia, one street in particular. There's 3 women and they're all like interconnected, but you don't really find out how. The twist in this was really tea. Like I quite enjoyed this. I then read The Secrets We Keep by Sally Hepworth. This has 3.9 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I said, this is good. It was a bit slow sometimes and incredibly sad. Oh yes, this was so sad. Okay, so it's a woman and she has early onset Alzheimer's and she's only 38. And so she moves into this care house and she basically meets a boy and it's a love story and it's all the politics of, oh, well, how can we let these 2 people be in an adult relationship when they are incapable of consent? And it's really, really beautiful because it's like written from her perspective. Some of the time, the protagonist, like the first person voice changes. I do recommend this. I thought this was really cute. Again, Sally Hepworth hits, okay? She hits. I then read a Patricia Cornwell that wasn't a part of the Kay Scarpetta series, and it is the first of the Andy Brazel series, which is The Hornet's Nest. I don't think this is for me. It has oh my gosh, it has a 3.3 on Goodreads. I don't know why I read this. That's a pretty shocking score. I gave it a 2. I said I didn't like the story at all. There was no real plot or resolution. I don't find the characters deep, likable, or relatable. The part where it switched to the voice of the cat really sent me over the edge. An absolute slog to get through, infinitely worse than the Scarpetta, which I don't mind. So I will not be continuing this Andy Brazel series. See, I say that, but I have the other 2 books, I think, so you know what? I might. I then read another Sally Hepworth. I think I've almost read all of them at this point. This is The Mother's Promise, and this has 4.1 out of 5 on Goodreads. but I gave it a 3. I need to jog my memory again. This one wasn't that great. It was quite depressing. Basically, a single mother is diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she has a daughter, and she sort of needs to navigate her end of life planning and what she's going to do with her teenage daughter. It was sad, and you'd probably skip that one. I then went for a classic, George Orwell's 1984, which I have not read until this year. Has a 4.2 out of 5 on Goodreads from 5 million ratings. That's kind of crazy. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I didn't elaborate. Yeah, the whole Big Brother is watching you. I just think that it's not the type of book for me. It's not the type where I was like, oh my God, this is so good. No. I think if you want to read the classics, maybe read it, but it did very little for me. Nita Prose's The Maid. And this is not The Maid that's on Netflix about the woman fleeing domestic violence. This is like a different story completely. 3.7 on Goodreads. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I said a non-neurodivergent writes a neurodivergent character but forces the idea in an over-the-top juvenile way in every single sentence throughout the entire book. I rolled my eyes more times than I could count. The plot is silly and superficial, poor character development, and very cliche. I didn't care for it. Hello. So you would say, based on my review, that I didn't enjoy it, and that if there was a second book, which there is, that I definitely wouldn't read it because I didn't like the first one. Did I read it? Yes. Yes, I did. Why? Because I was in New York at the time and I was doing so much walking around, and it was free and it was an audiobook, and I was like, go on then. It's like one of those ones where you're like, this kind of sucks, but it's entertaining. Very juvenile. But if you like silly little reads that aren't good plots, but are like just easy to listen to, and they're free, do not pay for that book. It was not good enough to pay for. Maybe that's for you, but as a general rule, I would not recommend The Maid. I then read Gratitude by Oliver Sacks. This is what it looks like. It has 4.1 on Goodreads. I gave it a perfect score out of 5 out of 5. If you don't know who Oliver Sacks is, he wrote The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. He was, I believe he's dead. Yes, he died in 2015. He was a British neurologist, so a brain doctor, and he was also kind of like a philosopher. His ways of thinking were very unique, and he wrote a lot of books. Pretty much all, I think, were nonfiction. But this book, Gratitude, I think was his last, and it's quite short. Yeah, so these are the last few months of his life. He wrote a set of essays in which he movingly explored his feelings about completing a life and coming to terms with his own death. It was heavy, okay, but no notes. It was brilliant. I would recommend, especially if you are medically or scientifically inclined. Then read another Kristen Hanna book, which was Wild. It has 4.17 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Trigger warning for like child abuse. Basically, a child just comes out of the woods and emerges, and she like has completely not been domesticated. She has lived like her 6 years of life literally in the bush. And the protagonist is a psychiatrist, and she basically says, I'll look after this child and try to teach her how to speak, teach her how to eat. And it's really intense, but it's fantastic. I would highly recommend Wild by Kristen Hanna. Okay, next, this is so random, so left field. I sort of made, not a New Year's resolution, but sort of a goal for this year to read things that I would not usually read. I want to get outside of my comfort zone, especially when it comes to nonfiction, and I want to learn things. So I read Fake Law, The Truth About Justice in an Age of Lies by The Secret Barrister. So it's like an anonymous author. It has a 4.1 on Goodreads, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. I'll give you a little summary. It sort of goes like, it uses cases to sort of examine how the justice system works and how it's flawed. The Secret Barrister is back to reveal the stupidity, malice, and incompetence behind many of the biggest legal stories of recent years. So he debunks the lies and rebuilds a hilarious, alarming, and eye-opening defense against the abuse of our law, our rights, and our democracy. It was pretty dry, but it was interesting, and I did learn a little bit. I can't really remember what I learned, but I remember at the time being like, oh, I didn't know that. So I think if you're legally inclined, you might enjoy that. I think this is the final Kristen Hanna book that I have read. This is The Great Alone. It has 4.4 out of 5 from over 1 million reviews. I gave this a perfect score of 5 out of 5. I said, I will never get over how incredible Kristen Hanna is as a writer. The plot, the characters, everything. The way she writes tragedy and loss is so profound. I cry in all of her books, but they are flawless and I still think about them often. I would die for her, honestly. So I'll give you a little summary. So this man, who's a former prisoner of war, comes home from Vietnam, a changed and volatile man. He loses another job. He makes an impulsive decision to move his family to Alaska, off the grid. This is in 1974. So the story is mostly from the little girl's perspective. She's 13, she's coming of age in a tumultuous time. Her parents have like a really rocky, emotional relationship that's not healthy. And the place they live is like incredibly harsh. It's, you know, they don't have electricity or running water. It's dark 18 hours of the day. And it's really good. There's murder, there's mystery, there's love. It's really, really good. I highly recommend this book. Goodreads Choice Award winner for the favorite historical fiction in 2018. So it's pretty good. I have excellent taste. Okay, so I then read the second Maid, which I was like, I rated this like a 2 out of 5. Like, why am I reading this? But I was like, maybe the second one will be better. It has a 3.8 on Goodreads. It has a blue cover instead of a red cover. I gave it a 3 out of 5. So this was a little bit more respectable, a little bit more redemption. But again, it's like, what are the chances of this maid, this neurodivergent maid, just being surrounded by murder all the time? Like, it's not, but it was a nominee for the reader's favorite mystery and thriller in 2024. If it would have won, that would have been crazy. It's not good, but it's entertaining enough, okay? It would never be a favorite of mine. Read the first one and see what you think, but it's really on the fence for me as to whether I would recommend you read it. The Tenant by Freida McFadden. This is her most recent one, I believe. 3.8 from 5 out of Goodreads. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I said, the more of Freida I read, the more I find her style of writing juvenile in the sense of over-explanation. I found it super strong in The Tenant. The excessive internal dialogue comes off as lazy. The premise of The Tenant is so similar to that of The Boyfriend, i.e. people who knew each other prior and lied about it and used different names. It's that whole unreliable narrator. It's lazy. No one can write an ending like Freida, and when you think you see the twist coming, you get the shock of your life when the twist is then twisted. Incredible page turners, super far-fetched and silly, but I do enjoy them. So I do understand how people don't like Freida McFadden books, but I do. And this was not the best, but it also wasn't the worst, so I would probably recommend it. I then read The Marriage Lie by Kimberly Bell. I read this in an ebook version. This has 3.9 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I said, I love this book, a great thriller until the end. The weakest motive ever. Sorry, this is a spoiler potentially. Fakes his own death to avoid telling his amazing wife about his past as a naughty kid. Hello, what? This is so ridiculous, it makes me mad. The author tried to romanticize him leaving her, even after we found out he didn't die, all because he favored money and the heist more than his wife. And then she makes sweet, sweet love to him as a final goodbye. He chose faking his own death and stealing millions of dollars over being with you. Also, dumb, irrelevant title. The marriage wasn't a lie. Mega disappointing ending, it ruined the book. So, I gave this a 3 out of 5, but that review that I just gave is not really setting 3 out of 5. If you intended to read that, don't. Then continuing on with my, what I would not usually read, but I'm trying to get into more non-fiction and I'm trying to learn things and trying to make my brain not be so smooth from all of the trash smut that I read. I read Wednesdays with Bob by Bob Hawke and Derek Riley. Has 4.9 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4. It's sort of a biography of Bob Hawke, who is a former Prime Minister of Australia. He's currently 87. And so this author, Derek Riley, basically goes to this guy's home every Wednesday for fine cigars and a reverent conversation. They talk about life, death, love, sex, religion, politics, sport, and everything in between. Talks about his Labour allies and his lover and his wife and his son and his friends, and it was good. I liked it. Then, shockingly, we have another Freida McFadden book. This is an older one. This is called Brain Damage, and this has Hello. 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I said it was okay. Probably the worst Freida book I've read in terms of quality of writing and the twist. I think, again, just because this is one of her older ones, it was just like not amazing. 2016. Yeah, okay, so it's like 9 years old. It was fine. I think if you like Freida's style of writing, then you would enjoy this. So next up, I read Inside the O'Briens by Lisa Genova. This is also the author of Still Alice. If you have read that book or seen it, it has Julianne Moore in it, and it's phenomenal. It's about Alzheimer's, early onset, and it's from the patient's perspective. Amazing. This is sort of similar in that this author is a neuroscientist, and I believe all of her books are about a different psychiatric or neurological condition. And this is about Huntington's, and it's about a man who is like late 40s, I believe, or early 50s, and he finds out that he has Huntington's disease. He doesn't know what that means, and it's basically about him navigating the disease with a large family in sort of a low socioeconomic situation. So I really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed Still Alice as well. And I know she has other books. I don't know what they are, but I don't think I have read them. Left, Neglected, and Love, Anthony are her other books, apparently, which I've not read, but I did really like this. I gave it has a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I also gave it a 4 out of 5. Then another Freida McFadden, you already know, this is The Wife Upstairs, 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I also gave it a 4 out of 5. I didn't elaborate. It is giving Verity, if you've read Verity by Colleen Hoover, in that the wife is in an accident, she can't walk, she needs a carer, and the carer and the husband, it's just giving a little bit suspicious. I do recommend this one. I thought this was quite good. Okay, next up, Freida McFadden, The Ex. I feel like just by looking at this cover, it looks so old to me. When was it written? 2019. It's not even that old. This has a 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4. I didn't say anything about it. The twists it was like a twist on a twist, and it took a little bit for my brain to like wrap my head around it. And I was like, all right. A bit convoluted, but I'll allow it. I enjoyed this. We then have Do You Remember? 3.9 on Goodreads. I gave it a 4 out of 5. The premise is she wakes up. She has no memory she knows who she is, but her recent memory is gone. And her husband is like not someone that she knows, and her memory like resets every single day. It's giving like 50 First Dates kind of, but the twist is really, really good, and I really, really liked it. Would recommend. Okay, now this next one is probably a little bit contentious. This is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It has 4.4 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. This really fell flat for me. I was really looking forward to it because it was so hyped. It was advertised as like science, baddie, love story, astronomy, rocket science. I really liked Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I didn't like any of her other books. I didn't like Carrie Soto is Back. I DNF'd it. I didn't like Daisy Jones and the Six. I thought it was boring, and I don't like a dual timeline. This, I gave 3 out of 5. I said I struggled with this book largely due to its confusing structure, dual timelines, combined with a large cast. It made it difficult to keep track of who was who and what was happening. The central incident was so poorly executed. I had to like read it 3 times, and I still don't understand what fully happened. There was like some kind of explosion or something. I'm trying my best like not to spoil anything, but I just didn't like it. There's endless exposition on atomic physics, page after page. It reads like a lecture, not a conversation. The protagonist is supposed to be talking to her lover, yet the dialogue is filled with clunky, unnatural lines like, "We as scientists call this symbiosis," and pseudo-profound musings about atoms in the universe. It felt more like mansplaining than meaningful connection, unrealistic, and frankly boring. Despite it being marketed as a love story, there's barely a hint of romance until page 167. This is a 300-page book. The emotional connection between the characters felt really forced and underdeveloped. The so-called breakup scene was especially cringeworthy and unnecessary, especially because they reconcile almost immediately. It lacked emotional weight and purpose. The recurring commentary of sexism and homophobia in the 1980s did my head in. It was hammered home so frequently that it began to feel so repetitive and heavy-handed. Yes, we understand that the 1980s and the era was regressive, but we don't need to be reminded every page. As for the ending, it was predictable and underwhelming. I'm not going to spoil it, but what the hell is my head doing? I'm not going to spoil it, but I was just like, nah, it's not for me. In the end, it wasn't a compelling women in STEM narrative. It leaned more into a superficial celebration of queer identity without giving enough depth to either the science or the romance. I wouldn't recommend this. It made me annoyed just because of how hyped it was, and I was just left disappointed. This next one is Love Mum by Ileana Zander. This was such a flop for me. This has 4.25 out of 5 on Goodreads. Excuse me. Oh. I gave it a 2 out of 5. This book was a total mess. Let's just start there. The tone, horrific. The first person narration is aggressively casual and so over the top. Like it's trying way too hard to be relatable. For example, I know it sounds shady, but hey, I'm not the only one who lives a double life. Was this written by an 11-year-old? Tell me this wasn't written by a 12-year-old boy. No guy ever wants to witness this. A girl giving birth. Like this, and like it's not satire. Like they're not kidding. I literally then say like, most men literally choose to be in the delivery room because they want to be there. What are we even doing here? I recommend so strongly not reading this because this book was so shit. Okay, so this is the author of One Day, which it's on Netflix. It's great. I haven't actually read the book, but I have watched the show. But this book is, do I have it? Yeah. You Are Here. And I just saw it in the bookstore and I looked it up on Goodreads and it had 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. So I was like, yeah, go on then. I gave it a 3 out of 5. This is what I said about it. It was poetic, which was nice, but it was incredibly slow and waffly, which was not nice. The writing was intelligent and articulate. It was often funny and cute, but it dragged. It was rather boring. A weak love story between 2 depressed people who spent a total of 4 days together. And there was a typo on page 117. I wouldn't really recommend it then. I hate a typo in a book. I hate a typo in a book, especially if it's a book that I've paid for. Ooh. I then read Barack Obama's Dreams from My Father. And this has 3.94 on Goodreads. I listened to the audio book where he narrated it because he has an excellent voice. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed A Promised Land. I would recommend A Promised Land. I wouldn't necessarily recommend Dreams from My Father. His father was kind of garbage, won't lie. He is slay though, obviously. This is a satirical novella by Freida McFadden. It is The Widow's Husband's Secrets Lie. It has a really low score on Goodreads, 3.3. I gave it a 3. I said, this book was so silly and ridiculous, but I think it is satire done well. And it's so short, and I think it was reasonably entertaining, so I probably would recommend it. I listened to the audiobook of Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mum Died. I see this everywhere. It has a 4.4 on Goodreads from over 1 million reviews. I didn't really like this, to be honest. And just back to with what I said, it's an autobiography, so I find it so awkward to rate it poorly and to talk shit about it because it's literally just like factual things about what happened in someone's life. I said, is this a good autobiography? Yeah, it's told pretty well. It's fine. Did I enjoy it? No, not one bit. It is uncomfortable and trigger warnings for abuse and sexual assault. And I just really didn't enjoy it. So I wouldn't recommend it personally. It's one of those books where when you finish reading it, you don't feel good. You feel worse than you did before you started reading it. It added nothing to my life. Sorry, Jeanette. The next book I read was another of Kristen Hanna's. This is one of her really old ones. And I gave it a 3 out of 5 because it was just so different to her current stuff. But it is Between Sisters. Basically, it's 2 sisters who have grown apart and they're stepsisters and they sort of, one's going through, you know, issues with like romance and work and comes back to the family town and they, yeah, you know, rekindle their friendship as sisters and it's fine. Would I recommend it? Maybe. It's not one of the best books I've read, but it's definitely not one of the worst. Okay, I then read Michelle Obama's Becoming. Now, I didn't actually read this. I started to read it, and then I pretty much DNF'd it about a year ago, and I was like, nah, we need justice for Michelle. So I listened to the audiobook, and it was narrated by her, and it was great. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I think the beginning, I just wasn't in a place to read nonfiction. And I think that all biographies and autobiographies should be audiobooks. I think they're just so much more digestible that way when you're listening to them and driving or walking or running or whatever you're doing. I just find it so boring to physically read nonfiction. I don't know. I think that's just me, but it is fantastic. I think she is so bright. I think she is so... I just have so much respect for both Barack and Michelle. I think they're excellent people. Okay, I then listened to another audiobook when I was flying to Melbourne. It is Fiona McIntosh's The Pearl Thief. Now, this has 4.2 on Goodreads. I gave it a 2. It is a historical fiction. I said it was predictable and it was so boring. I liked the ending, but it was not enjoyable. Also, insane trigger warning for rape. Would not recommend. This author was recommended to me by my sister-in-law because she's written a couple. So The Lavender Keeper, and like her books are all really well rated. I think that I just really didn't like that one. I wouldn't really recommend that. I think it was just probably not my style, and I'm not someone who enjoys reading about any kind of trauma or violence. It affects me. I'm a baby. So this brings me to Ali Hazelwood's most recent book, Deep End. I had such high expectations for this because of The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain. This sucked. Oh my God, this made me mad. I wanted to DNF it so many times. The only thing that I liked about this book was that there was overlaps with the characters in the other books, which I thought that was so fun. This has 3.9 on Goodreads. I gave it a 2. That was probably too generous. This is my review. I'm pretty sure it's scathing. A young adult attempt at 50 Shades, in brackets, slanderously. This book was beyond cringe, in inverted commas. I'm afraid of the unpredictability of existing. What? This isn't profound. This is dumb. The premise of this book is I have a mental block, and the only thing that can help me is sleeping with a man who hurts me, and I enjoy it because my dad abused me. She cries every single time they have sex. He licks said tears every single time they have sex. His pet name for her is Troll, and we never understand why. That really sent me over the edge. The smut wasn't good because these people didn't know each other. There was no emotional depth or intimacy beyond fucking. It's also not smart, it's BDSM, and she's always in physical pain. This was difficult to read. This was not for me. Too many unfinished side plots that go nowhere and add nothing to the story. Weird housemate, therapy, abusive dad, wholesome stepmom, best friend's ex trope, professional athlete, pre-med. It's too much. I really, really disliked this. I think I finished the whole thing just to punish myself. I don't know. Like, it was such a horrific read. It was awful. Ali, respectfully, what the fuck is this? Not only do I not recommend this, but like, I would like to seek financial compensation for the $20 or so that I paid for this book, because, and the 6 hours of my life that I'll never get back. That was awful, 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 awful. I was then given another author recommendation by my sister-in-law, who really redeemed herself with this one, because the previous one, Pearl Thief, Fiona McIntosh, not my favorite. But this one, Broken Light by Joanne Harris, 3.8 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3, so it's like, it's not bad, not my favorite, but whatever. I said this was very unique. It's a bit fantasy, it's a bit far-fetched, but I largely enjoyed it, although the ending fell a bit flat for me. I would probably recommend this. I think this was a cute enough fiction, but it did have a little bit of fantasy, like, not like magic, but like was a bit make-believe and a bit silly, but I think that it was written well. This is also the author of Chocolat with, it was made into a movie with Johnny Depp and Vanessa Paradis, which I have to read. It's on my TBR, as well as the prequel, Vianne, is that how you say it? I also have that to read. Okay. We're getting to it. We're getting to the end now. I then have Do Not Disturb by Freida McFadden. This was a pretty short, comfortable sized read. 3.9 on Goodreads. I gave it a 3. I said, Freida loves an unreliable narrator. You're reading this person's perspective, and then it comes out they're actually lying and omitting very key details, like murder. Feels so lazy to me. I'm getting a bit sick and tired of the unreliable narrator. This is a good book. But if you've read all her other books, it's no longer a good book. It's just sort of a copy and paste. You know how I was talking about how if there is a audiobook on my library app and it has like more than like a 3.8-ish on Goodreads, I'll read it. I read this, which is Abby Glein's Rosemary Beach #1, Fallen Too Far is what it's called. It's short. Like, I feel like you can just tell by the cover the kind of book this is, okay? The smut in it is good, but it's not great because there's no like deep actual emotional connection. It's just lust and fucking. I probably give this like a 2.5, a 3. I listened to it in audio book form and just listened to it while I clean my house and go for walks and stuff. It was whatever, probably a 2.5. Would not really recommend this. This was a nominee for favorite romance in 2013. It's not really romance. They don't really know each other. The twist in it is pretty good, but yeah, not much else to say about that. This is the final book that I've read so far this year. This is Great Game On. It is nonfiction, obviously, and it is literally about the history of power in Russia and China and the US and the relations of such things. I was so brave, honestly. This was dry as hell. This was heavy as hell. Oh my God. This was a really challenging read. It was interesting. The author is quite articulate, and the parts that are sort of narrative where he's like, oh yeah, I was, on a train to Mongolia. They're enjoyable, but it's just like fact, history, fact. And I'm like, I'm not retaining any of this. It's interesting enough to read, but oh my God, is this a good book objectively? Yes, it's very fascinating and it's full of a lot of fun, relative word, important history, politics, why things are the way that they are. Did I enjoy this? No. Okay, so in the time that it took me I think I started this maybe in April or May. And I've probably read about 25 books in the time that it took me to read this book. So I would read it, maybe 10 pages, read a book in its entirety. Come back, read about 10, 15 pages, read another book in its entirety, read a chapter, just because it's not boring, but it's boring. This has a 3.5 on Goodreads, but only from 12 reviews. I'd probably give it a 3. That is every book that I have read so far this year. If you've read any, I would love your thoughts. The best book you've read this year, the worst book you've read this year. And I hope you have enjoyed this vlog, and I will see you in the next one.